Hello friends and welcome to my channel. My name is Jess, I'm the creator of Pinkrex, and today we're going to be making a living moss rock. If you are new here, I make videos about plants, video games, and lots more, so if you like that kind of content and you haven't done this already, the next time you have the like button over for Margarita Night, please remember to dust the rim of their glass with white sand instead of salt. Also, please subscribe to the channel down below and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of my future uploads. Okay, so here is the moss rock that I made a couple weeks ago. I put it in this little cloche, but you definitely don't have to do that. This was, I think, $5 from Target. I don't think they have them right now, but the next time they have them, I'm going to be buying a lot more of them because they are super useful. I just have the moss kind of stuck into the little crevices. And I'm sure there's a better way that you could make it, but it is sitting in this little dish of water. I just change out the water every couple of days. I'm sure that eventually algae will grow in there, but I've had it in afternoon sun and nothing bad has happened. And it has grown a whole bunch. To make this project, you're going to need a couple of things. I used lava rock, but you could definitely use like a sponge or anything that's porous that's gonna pull water up through capillary action. Aside from that, obviously you're gonna need some moss. You can find moss growing outside. Any type of moss will work for this. You are going to need some preserved sphagnum moss. If you don't have any preserved sphagnum moss, you could use something that's gonna soak up water because inevitably, if you are sticking your rocks together, you're gonna have some gaps. The sphagnum moss is really great for pulling water up through those gaps to make sure that the entire rock is saturated all the time. I have a giant bowl of it on the floor because I'm going to be making some moss poles after this for my next video. So if you'd like to see that, don't forget to subscribe. If you can squeeze it and it's still dripping, that usually means it's too wet, but in this case that is okay because it's not. It's just going to be sitting in contact with the water all the time anyway, and eventually your sphagnum moss, if it's good quality preserved sphagnum moss, will regrow from a project like this. The last thing you're going to need is something to stick your rocks together with if you're using more than one rock. If you can find a lava rock big enough to just do one, that's perfect. I would recommend doing that. But otherwise, I stuck my 3 rocks together with UV resin. You can find UV resin pretty much anywhere. I know it's available at Michael's. I don't know if it's available at Joann, but I wouldn't be surprised. Otherwise, I order mine from Amazon. This is the UV resin that I used for this project. It doesn't have a brand, so that's a little wonky. It is hard type UV resin. And to cure it, I just have this little UV nail light, but you can leave UV resin in the sun and it'll cure just fine. You're gonna need something to set your rock creation in. I just have little 4-inch drip trays. They are, I think they're like 39 cents at Home Depot. But really anything that you can put a little bit of water in and then dump out and clean out every now and then is gonna work just fine. You could use a little dish. You totally don't need to set it in a cloche. You could even put it in like a jar. You could just like flip the jar over and set it on top on a plate and that would be exactly the same. I like to save big pickle jars for that reason. And again, this is my UV resin. I got it from Amazon for please don't dump. Got it from Amazon for $7. So there it is. It's in a little dark bottle because otherwise, obviously, if it's exposed to light, it goes bad really fast. And I'm going to be using the USB from my computer for this. Anyway. I'm curing all my resin over here. So the first thing you want to do is pick out some really nice, sizable, visually interesting, or pick out some boring rocks, I don't care. You pick out whatever rocks speak to you. And if the rocks are speaking to you, you should probably find help. We'll make a moss rock today and that'll help, I'm sure. These are just a few lava rocks I have from a bag I got from Home Depot. I get a lot of stuff from Home Depot. I prefer Lowe's, but Lowe's is like a half an hour away, so Home Depot it is. I like to pick groups of 3 or 5 rocks, just depending on how much space you have. I am using a 4-inch drip tray as their little situation to hang out in, so I'm only going to use enough rocks to fit into that space nicely. And you want to kind of make them tall, so if you pick long rocks, I would recommend like 1 short rock and 2 long rocks, and you kind of get to make like a little Jenga puzzle with it. It's a lot of fun. This is probably going to take the longest if you're super picky about the way that things look the way I am. It's gonna feel a little awkward at first no matter what you do, I think. Don't stress about it too much. That is the little formation I'm gonna go with, is just these 3 guys kind of stuck together that way. And then if I wanted, I could have a little plant like in the middle. That could be cute. Not ideal to be doing this when there's sun on me, but I am just going to carefully flip it over, take some of my UV resin, and just drop it in between. Try to put it where there's not going to be a lot of surface area showing. And you can even like pull them apart and put them back together, and that's gonna help the UV resin stick to itself. But when you're curing resin, you just hold the light over it and eventually it should harden up. And you'll probably have to cure it a couple of times because ideally you want the little UV rays to be hitting directly on where you have the resin. You do want to make sure you do this in a well-ventilated space. There we go. Now they're stuck together. And you can test it if you want. This one is already totally cured, which is great. Very nice. Just to make triple sure, that is gonna sit in that little tray super nicely. So, how exciting. As you can see, there is a big old gap in the middle and a big old gap on the bottom. So, and they are nice and stuck together with that resin. UV resin is so cool. So that's where this moss comes in, this little sphagnum moss, is you're gonna take and just shove sphagnum moss in all of the little open crevices so that you can make sure that water is actually going to reach all of the moss when it's in there. Just kind of making sure to get moss in all of the little spaces. And that is just packed in there really nicely. You hardly need any preserved moss if you're doing it correctly. You only need a little bit. It's possible we'll need a little bit more at the end, but if we need more, I'll grab more. No big deal. The next thing that you're going to need is your moss. I have a couple of different types of moss. I am not a moss expert by any means, but I think that this one looks like hypnum moss, this one looks like badge moss, and I might have some hair moss in the bottom. I'm not super sure. If you know what types of mosses these are, please feel free to correct me. And you're just gonna take your rock, and I'm actually going to give it a little bit of a rinse first, just to make sure we're not setting the moss onto a totally dry surface. Because mosses, they don't like to be dry. And I'm just going through, and this is dechlorinated water just in a little squirt bottle. You could easily just like dunk the rock in some dechlorinated water. Rainwater also would be just fine. Dunk your little rock creation in there. And eventually over time the moss will hopefully root to the rock, so it's not gonna be an issue. My moss has been in one of my propagation boxes, so it's a little bit long, a little bit gangly, and that's okay, because that's kind of how I like it. So I'm just gonna take and tuck it into that little gap right there, and then the longer sort of wonky pieces, I might decide to trim off later, I might leave, who knows? I haven't decided yet. And I'm just going to start by tucking, ooh, that's an interesting looking thing. I'm just gonna start by taking pieces of moss and tucking them into all of these little corners. And you can use, again, any type of moss that you find outside for this. Or if you've been growing moss in a terrarium the way that I have, you can use that just the same. Just tucking it in there, getting her all tucked in, snug as a bug. Just kind of putting it wherever. My goal right now is to cover up all of the spots that I used resin on the top. And I think I'm doing that quite effectively. So that's good. That's what I wanted to do. And it doesn't matter if you really push on the moss, because it's not gonna really hurt the moss. I've still got kind of a wonky little gap in the top there. So I'm just gonna put that in there. And you see I broke one of these guys off. I'm just gonna lay it right on there. Just have fun with it. It's gonna look kind of wonky no matter what you do, because it's kind of a wonky little project. And you can just set it in your dish. And you can trim it back a smidge if you want to. I'm going to, oh, look it. I dropped one. I dropped a little moss friend. I'm sorry, friend. Make sure to moisten the rock. He said it's okay. And make sure there's a little reservoir in the bottom. I am going to change this out tomorrow as well as the next day until you have rinsed off most of that dirt. That is the little moss rock. The reason I use the 4-inch drainage tray is because it fits really nicely into this little $5 cloche from Target. I often see little teeny tiny cloches at the dollar store, but yeah, you don't have to put it in a cloche if you don't want to. And that is all I've got for this one. I hope you enjoyed making a little moss rock with me. It's just a super fun, easy little DIY thing that kids or adults or anybody could do. If you liked the video and you haven't done this already, please remember to, the next time you have the like button over for Margarita Night, dust the rim of their glass with white sand rather than salt. Also, please subscribe to the channel down below and drop a comment if you ended up doing this cute little project. I would love to hear if anybody else likes putting moss on things. If you like, you can find me on Instagram or on TikTok. My name is Pinkrex with 2 X's on all platforms. I have a ton of planty content over on TikTok, so if you like that sort of thing, go check it out. Lots of good stuff there. That's all I've got for now, so if you made it to the end of the video, just know I really appreciate you being here, and I still have no idea what I'm doing. Okay, thanks, bye!